I thought it was a great metaphor, despite its reference to God, because that's the truth. We are not going to figure this shit out. And I like to use an analogy of a traditional Native American story talking about a wolf, which explains that the reason a wolf howls at the moon is that a wolf is so intelligent that it can look up at the moon at night, and when it sees the moon, it starts howling in pain because it realizes that there's something that's beyond its own comprehension and intellect, and it drives it crazy. And as a Wolf Clan guy myself, I can tell you that's the truth. Not being able to figure out the truth about something, it drives Captain Atheist nuts. It really does. This start of religion, I mean, there's people that have done such great research on the true roots and facts that I'm sure a lot of you have watched a movie called Zeitgeist, and that movie has a great section explaining the origins of most of the modern religion, you know. And in the meantime, against religion, we have this thing called science that is always working toward answering the questions about human behavior and the human brain. And science is something that can be proven. Science is something that we can verify. If a scientist tells us there's something called gravity, gravity can be demonstrated. So Captain Atheist is getting messages from all sides here right now. I'm reading everybody loud and clear. Just hard to break in the middle of a thought like that and address this little stuff. So, but anyway, yeah, what I'm saying is, you know, religion at its root base, you know, this is another big Captain Atheist thing, speaking about the fire. And later on, we'll get into this later in weeks to come about what my connection with this. And anyway, sorry, folks, but anyway, what I was going to say is at the root of it, you know, if you go back to prehistoric times, you know, cavemen, whatever you want to say, prehistoric humanity, for a long time there was no fire. And then all of a sudden, humanity began to understand that they could harness the power of fire and use it. And what this did was, now instead of being just blind in the dark at night and subject to whatever, now they had this fire, and humans could gather around that fire to take warmth and take shelter from all the beasts and creatures and things that were growling and screaming in the night at them. And what else this also afforded was luxury time. Okay, we got nothing we have to do but sit here all night around this fire. And this is the beginning of not just people talking shit, but storytelling, you know. And so when the storytelling time starts, then they got more time to start to think and try to rationalize and try to come up with answers, you know, for questions that they normally wouldn't have had when they were just fighting for their survival. So this undoubtedly is where all our myths start. All the stories that we take for granted all had their roots at that time when humanity finally had fire and could sit and talk and start to exchange lengthier thoughts. And so this is the same place that religion comes from, because now you have people wanting to know answers. Why are we here? Where do we come from? You know, what created us? Why does this work this way? You know, where's the earth? And all the religions that people are following today have their origins thousands of years ago. Thousands of years ago, from people that lived in a relatively small space, most of them. Most of them weren't globetrotters, and they were basically subject to their own language, their own culture, and that's what influenced them. So of course, since then, so many things have changed in human perception. In religion, it was taught for years, and I believe only within the last 200 years that the Catholic Church even was still insisting that the Earth was the center of the universe, and that the sun revolved around the Earth. And you know, we now know this is ridiculously false. You know, we all know that the Earth indeed revolves around the sun, not the other way around. This can be proven and demonstrated by science. So take a look at the rest of religion and think about what it really is and what these stories are. I mean, basically, and not to say it in a rude way, but a bunch of goat herders, you know, sitting around in a desert, coming up with answers about where we come from when they have no science basically at their disposal and no real comprehension at all, of what's really going on. And okay, many things have been changed since those times, like we were saying. So the Earth is no longer the center of the universe. With science. Yes, with science and medicine, we have other reasons now that we can live other than believing and worshiping in God. The idea that you're going to live your life guided either by a fear of punishment or a desire for a reward is crazy. We have one life, people, and instead of wasting your lives on something that isn't there, you need to enjoy this life. As we all know, it's short, it can be taken at any time. And so when I see millions and millions of people living their lives submitting to a myth, and so I was talking about where the origins of it must have started with wanting to have answers, but once that initial thought started to take a hold of people, okay, that there's gods, there's superior beings that we can't see that are guiding us and creating us and influencing us and affecting our behavior and giving us tests. When that took shape, then people with another thought process, I believe, engaged in something else, which was like, wow, these people believe in this invisible people that are telling them what to do. This would be really a great tool to start to control people, what they think, what they do, how they act, and basically that's how that worked. I mean, Aristotle talked about it, explained thousands of years ago what the purpose was of a god with a ruler. That any leader of a country politically, whether it's a dictator, a king, a president, benefits tremendously from the superstition of religion, because the leaders have always been placed closer to God than the common person. Like you look at, say, European countries in the Middle Ages, it was like the king was put there by God. Emperors, dictators, kings all over the world, people believed that these people were the leader because they were coming right from God. And so, as Aristotle waxed on, it would be much less likely for people to rebel or question anything against a leader that they felt was working for the creator, the universe. They put them in a way. So throughout history, people lived poor, abused, taken advantage of, enslaved, literally as slaves, without rebelling, because they felt that the leader was, working for the invisible man in the sky. So, when they attempted the assassination of the Pope, when they attempted the assassination of the Pope, it was said that it was God that was behind saving his life. He didn't mention that it was actually the surgeons that were working on him for 6 hours that saved his life, not God. The church itself, especially institutions like the Catholic Church, these big organizations, even to a lesser extent, mega wealthy is Pat Robertson, his group, and it's never addressed that these organizations, these churches, starting with the Vatican, working all the way down, are mega rich, and they're taking that money in because, as George Carlin said, God needs money. He needs more money. He does this, he does that, but he's not good with his finances. That's the truth, because they have all this money, but it doesn't seem like any of it really goes toward where it could make a big difference. Trickles, little tiny bits, gestures made to seem and put on the appearance of that the churches are doing something to contribute, the religion is giving something to contribute. We're going to, in these next weeks, we're going to get into people like Mother Teresa, who I believe was a huge fraud, who did not actually want to cure the sick, Emil, just was sitting there, putting on a front of doing the right thing. It was actually an egotist that was looking to be her own kind of rock star, and she actually died admitting the last years of her life, admitted she didn't believe anymore. Admitted it to people very close to her. And it's very strange. It's a contradiction with all that money, because according to their own myth, Jesus was supposed to be poor, and he was supposed to be hanging with the lowest members of society, you know, the hookers and the blind and the lame and the beggars in the streets. And these are the people that he was hanging with. But it seems that these people, you know, according to their myth, because I personally have great doubts as to whether the person ever even existed, and I have reasons for that. And we're going to have a great episode in the future coming up with the origins of the messianic figures. And I'll give you a clue right now. Just go search Horus, the Egyptian god Horus, the god of the sun, and you'll see that Horus's story is exactly Jesus' story. Everything from his virgin birth, wise men, you know, being killed and being resurrected 3 days, his disciples, all of it. And so, you know, first thing you got to realize, there might have been a guy that lived on the earth, very possibly, Jesus of Nazareth, who was a human being, but he certainly was not, if he did exist, in fact, was not the Son of God any more than anyone else was, because none of us are. We are a product of a sperm meeting an egg. We are a product of primordial ooze, you know, evolving. And yes, evolution. Now, some facts here. I mean, the United States will center on at first, because this is where we are and broadcasting from. This is where Captain Atheist is living and residing. And I'd like to see that the show starts to bridge some understanding between people from outside of the United States, that all people living in the United States do not adhere to these crazy beliefs. But it's pretty overwhelming, because the rest of the world is basically, I don't want to say forced, but, you know, what the United States decides to do for a couple hundred years now pretty much, you know, influences what happens to the rest of the world. And that has to do with money, power, technology, military might. And like right now in the United States, according to some reputable surveys, more so than in any other democracy in the world, 92% of the population of the United States believes in a God. And 92% of the United States also has smartphones and talking cars and computers and internet and all this technology available to them. And to me, it's a very, very scary concept. 92% believe in God. 40% of the people, yes, when we have so much access to information, you know, it's 2012 people, it's not 1812. So anything that pretty much anybody says, anything, a politician, a talk show host, right, all the way to Captain Atheist, you know, Ozzy Osbourne, anybody, you can check what they say. You can go yourself, and it doesn't mean by clicking on one link and go, well, this person says this, but you have all this information that you can access and educate yourself. And I think this is the biggest problem the world is facing today. You know, and native elders warned of this, you know, over 100 years ago, that the more readily available the things that we don't need to survive, to live, the more readily those things become available to us, the irony will be how the things that we absolutely need to survive will start to become less readily available to us. So guess what? We all have a smartphone, and we all have a PlayStation 3, and we all have a laptop, and we all have a Bluetooth or an iPhone, but do we all have water, air, space, medical care? You know, it is a benefit of science, yet somehow in this country people are going without it, you know. So what I was going to say is that you this week is just so hard, people. I apologize for the stumbling and everything like that, but anyway, what it is that these things will become less readily available. You have people thinking right now that are so laziness is the problem. People do not want to take the time when they have all these toys, they have all these exciting diversions, these things to do, from the football game to the fight to the pro wrestling match to, fuck it, the titty bar, man. I'll say it, you know. Shit, you can sit at home and jerk off all day watching porn. I mean, this is what kind of distractions are available to us. So why is somebody to say, hey, you know what, I don't need to see, you know, Ron Jeremy today. I need to go and educate